everyone has their ball python setup guide videos, right? Like every single person who has a YouTube has one, right? Well, I guess I'm going to add to that list today. But I'm doing that for two reasons, even though I usually try to avoid like the kind of common species. That's why I don't really talk a whole lot about like the care of cresties and balls and beardies and stuff, because there's just a lot of it out there. But I'm going to do one today for two reasons. Number one is it's kind of easy free content for you guys, and I'm already doing it anyway. And that is for the second reason, which is for whenever I do one of the reptile shows, I like to have a little bit of a display, because I decided that since I don't always have a lot of snakes, but I like to do a lot of education stuff, a really good example I thought would be a really good idea. So that's what we're doing today. Is this is for a subadult or juvenile ball python set up properly, or at least a way that I think is good for one of those. So biggest thing to keep in mind with this video, and we're going to get right into it, is that this is not the only way. The way I show you, the way everyone else shows you as well, isn't the only way to do it. There's a lot of variations. That's why I don't do setup guides. I just show you a really cool way that I decided to do it one way. That all that means is it's just not the only way. That's all. All right, let's get going right into it then. So to start things off with, we're going to start with the actual enclosure itself. So this is a 36 by 18 by 18 PVC enclosure with really thick plexiglass doors. This is what I think is a very good size for a small juvenile yearling subadult ball python. Once you get to an adult size, I want something with at least a little bit more length, height, and depth. And then eventually I will be doing a full adult ball python enclosure video, although it'll be probably very similar to what we're about to show up. But basically I'm just building my, show display for you guys right now. Moving right along, we're going to talk about this right here. So this is an under tank heater. It's a really big one too. So the way to heat things properly, at least as far as ball pythons go, and I'm going to try not to get too much in the way of this as we set this up, but snakes really need a lot of that belly heat. They need that to kind of help digest their food. And that doesn't mean that you necessarily can't have above heat supplemental stuff as well as an actual light for them, but this is really important. So we take this really big one that you would use, say, for instance, for like the large Zoomed or Exoterra, which is what this size is this is the size of like one of the large Exoterras. And this big pad will be able to create a good thermoregulation area for them. So we'll put this over here just under there like that, and that is turned on. It's a good thermal gradient, which means one side's warm, one side's cool, and then you want to be able to give enough space for the animal to move around to decide and choose where he feels comfortable throughout his whole day. And the ectothermic, is basically just cold-blooded, where they don't produce their own body heat. So that's why I think having a larger enclosure than you usually see people going with, which I think this should be a good new standard size. This is going to be the hot spot over here, and then this will be the cool spot. So now we've taken care of the enclosure and the heating. We can talk about lighting a little bit. As far as actual lighting goes, I think that a good UVB light is good for them, a nice low wattage one. There's a lot of good brands out there like Acadia, VivTech. This is just a standard little halogen light that works just fine for them. It's low wattage and it's brighter than I probably would. I would actually have like one of the little incandescent bulbs for this size of enclosure, but because this is for my display for reptile shows, it's a little bit brighter than I normally would do for them, because they are still crepuscular, they are still nocturnal. They're not going to be out a whole lot, but it would still provide them with a little bit of UVB light. And they do have plenty of really good products. So with that being said, let's get into the actual meat of it. So to start with, we're going to talk about the substrate. So the substrate that I'm choosing for a ball python in a more temperate climate like Colorado or a lot of the United States is this coconut coir right here. So that is the coconut chunks that have been chunked up into these big chunks right here. There's a bunch of different brands out there, Cocoa Husk and Reptichip and EcoEarth and all these other things. This is Reptichip if you are in fact curious. I think it does just fine, but a nice good thick layer of this, so here you can bury it in pretty well. This is for a couple reasons. The first one is that they are fossorial, And so what that means is that they like to bury and dig underneath. Not like a Kenyan sand boa by any means where you're never going to see the thing, but they do like to bury a little bit. As well as a nice thick layer like this helps add in and retain that humidity. So when you add the humidity to this, it helps hold that in a little bit better. And then let's get right into, as long as we're talking about humidity, to the water dish. This is a very large, big water dish, and excuse me for the hair. This had the St. Bernard in the car with me when I picked a lot of this up, and I'm still finding hair everywhere, unfortunately. But this is just like a nice little Dollar Tree or a dollar store dog bowl. It's plastic, it's dishwasher safe. This is big enough to where it'll add a lot of humidity just being in the enclosure, as well if it did feel the need to soak. If it's just kind of not quite lacking, you're still dialing everything in, it allows them to soak for quite a while. A pretty decent size ball python can fit in this. And so generally you'll want to put the water dish on the cool or kind of in the middle. I'm going to put it kind of in the middle, closer towards the front, and that'll be, I think, pretty good. It'll still be kind of cool, and there's plenty of room for them to move around. I'm not going to add water to this. I know that that's kind of a thing that I wish people would add water to their enclosures, but again, it's just the show display. So from there, that's the basic stuff. And then we're going to get into the hides for them. So there's a lot of different ways that people like to do their different hides. There's essentially the cool, commercial, naturalistic looking ones of these, or the ones that you kind of DIY or utilitarian look. So I like to do a little combo of both. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put that other little bit of cork bark there. We're going to take this half log here, and we'll put this over here under the warm side. And then we're going to take this cool one, and we're going to put it over here. And then we're going to take another little one, and we're going to put it right there. These are pretty easy. These are purchased, and I just use a little soldering iron or soldering pen to do this out. So that way, even right here where there's a little bit of point, it's not sharp at all, it's not going to injure the animal, and there's a little bit of texture for them to rub against if they choose to when it comes time for shedding. So those are the 3 different hides for there. Now, that being said, you want to have humidity. You want to think microclimates. Yeah, they're from places where the temperature can get very, very high and very low, but where they spend a good majority of their time are in those termite hills where the temperature stays very consistent. They don't spend all of their time there, which is why you want to give them a little bit more space. So to help with that microclimate of that consistent humidity and temperature, we're going to add some damp sphagnum moss. So we take the rectichip that's been reconstituted with a little bit of water, so it's not damp, but it's nice and moist. And we're going to take some sphagnum moss. We have plenty in there, and we're going to tuck that under this one. And we're going to take some, and we're going to tuck it under this one over here, like so. And then we're going to take the rest of it. Here, we'll just swap it out, right? Haha, perfect. There we go. So then now, we have 3 hides in this very long thing. So the key to these larger enclosures, because what a lot of the things that they say, one of the prevailing myths about ball pythons is that they have to stay in small spaces, because they like to feel confined and close and comfort like that. Well, which is kind of true. They do like to feel very secure because they are cryptid animals by nature, which means they like to feel concealed because they're prey items. But that doesn't mean that they won't move around. And so we like to give them lots of places for them to hide and feel comfortable while being able to properly thermoregulate all around here. So there we go. Now we've taken care of like the bare minimum stuff. Like if this was like the bare minimum, this is it right here. But we're going to keep going. So in addition, we want to have some stuff in there to make it look good, right? So we have all of these artificial plants. And if you wanted to, you could go bioactive with it. Although ball pythons, it's a little bit more difficult to do, at least until you've done it a few times, because they're bigger animals and they will kind of tear plants and stuff up. As well as we have these really cool grapevine climbs, right? So we're just, and these, what's great about this is that I like these for this size of enclosure because they're not too big, which means that you can move them around and change it up whenever it comes time to cleaning or changing up the substrate. You can move everything around, and it's a new environment for your animal to be around and check out. So we're just going to kind of put them wherever. Give them places to climb. Now, ball pythons, there's this, they are fairly sedentary, so they don't like to climb. They don't like to move around a whole lot. Like if you look at the build, the anatomy of the ball python, that thing isn't really meant to be climbing trees all the time. that doesn't mean that they won't be found in trees at all, because they have very rarely and obscurely, but that means you should still give them an opportunity to move around and stretch. So we're gonna do this like that. There we go, nice and secure, because they're kind of, let's get that up there a little bit. There we go, they can climb all the way up there, right? And then what we're gonna do, a lot of people, when they start building these custom enclosures, this was built by a local guy here in Colorado. They used to have like little vents at the top. They started to change that. Instead of vents, they drill these kind of little cross T sections of little holes to kind of still help with airflow, because there's still airflow from here and then airflow kind of in between. But it helps retain humidity a little bit better. That's kind of this new style that they're starting to move towards. But with that, you can take one of these cool little aquarium plants, because you don't have to get it where it's only branded reptiles. As long as it's animal dishwasher safe, you can use something like this. It's made for aquariums, which obviously would be animal safe. And you can take this little thing over here and just put it through this little hole in the back. And that way, hopefully the animal won't pull it down, because ball pythons are very good at that. They're not intentionally destructive, but they will absolutely move stuff around. So we have that cool little one over here. We're gonna take this really kind of cool, I believe it's called Fate Monstera, I think, for the plant people out there before I get yelled at. We're gonna take this, I'm gonna shove that under there. It's kind of bent. We're gonna use that to kind of anchor it in like that. So like there. Now we're gonna take another little aquarium one, has that little anchor down there. Put that at the front. And again, these are, I'm using a lot, obviously, but they can be moved around and changed pretty often to whenever you feel like doing so. Now, the only thing that some people might argue is it's going to be really hard to find your ball python with all these places looking around and trying to find that for them, which arguably, yeah, that's probably true. It's going to take you won't exactly know where it is. That's kind of the fun part of it, is looking around and trying to find that. And then here's another little cork bark that we'll just kind of prop up in the back like that. So there you go. This is a very busy, but still a very nice looking naturalistic little thing. Now, that being said, you can use, instead of this like cheap dollar whatever bowl anymore, you can get one of the more like reptile centered manufactured ones. You can get more of these, or you can do a little bit more utilitarian, where it doesn't have to be these more expensive but nicer looking pieces. It can be more of these bowls and things. Perfectly fine. It's up to your preference. I just like these because they can be cleaned very easily and very quickly. Now, that being said, here's the setup. That all looks good. You got your light, your heat, your substrate, your hides, your water bowl, all of your climbing foliage and things like that. How do we make sure that our stuff is dialed in properly? Now, the temperature of things that I'm going to show on the video obviously won't be exactly accurate. It takes some time for everything to heat up and get centered and fixtured, right? But this is where these things come in so important, and as we make a big mess of them. So this is a combination thermometer and hydrometer. So what this is so for one probe, which you can buy them like this, where it has just one single one. Come here. But I don't necessarily like these as much, because I like the two different ones that you can actually get the accurate humidity and temperatures more off, like a little bit more precisely. You can move them around with two separate dials and probes. So there is this one, but I like this one a little bit better because there's two separate ones. And so this one is for, you can tell with like the little metal one, which usually means it's a little bit more sensitive. The plastic coated ones, it takes longer to really get that temperature. It needs to be really kind of stable for a while. So this will take the temperature of that, and you can move this around. So this has a little suction cup on the back, so you can suction cup it to kind of wherever you want to in the enclosure. And you can put the dial under the hot side, under the cool one over there. You can put it over here on the cool side. You can move it all around if you want to. And then here's the hydrometer. So, we take this hydrometer over here and we put it underneath the hide over there in the back. And then, we can have it suction cupped up there like that. Although it doesn't like to stick to this. It likes to stick to the plexiglass. But so here's a little probe. I don't really have to worry about that. And then personally what I think, and forgive me, I'm just kind of leaving it there. This is a reptile keeper's like savior right here. This really, really helps. And I know the price of them since COVID has gone up a lot, but you can still find these fairly inexpensively. I have two different ones because just like every other thermometer out there, they're off by a little bit. The two different brands are off by like maybe 2 or 3 degrees, but I still like to double check it when I set up a new setup. You can take one of these, you can sit there, and because it's the infrared, I think the camera will pick that up. You can sit there and dial it in wherever you go. So like right there, like because it's a little cool, 77, which is probably about as cool as you want that to be, but it also just got set up and it's starting to warm up a little bit. So that's basically all I really got. And then we have these cool little plexiglass things, just like all of the other little sliding glass ones, like so, and like so. Perfect. And so that is your subadult or juvenile ball python setup video. Like I said before at the beginning of this isn't the only way to do it. This isn't necessarily the best way to do it because it all depends on the room that you put it in, the area that you live in, and a whole bunch of other factors that determine whether or not this is the best thing for it. For instance, if this was going into a room where the AC was going on a lot, where it wasn't as warm all the time, I would want to be able to put on another fixture and put in like either a radiant heat panel or like a ceramic heat emitter to give it a little bit more heat. And that's something that, you need to think about. If you live in Florida, if you live in southern Texas, where it's much more humid than it is in like middle America, or like in somewhere it gets really cold where the heat is going and it dries things out. Maybe aspen bedding is something that you want more, because if you do coconut, it'll just turn into a swamp if there's already a bunch of humidity in the air to begin with. But hopefully you enjoyed this. If you guys are ever at one of the shows that I'll be vending, I usually stay in Colorado, but I've done one in Texas. I might do more again too. You'll see this setup or a variation of that. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything like that, let me know down in the comments. I may have missed something. I don't think so. This is essentially how I would set up my ball python, with the belly heat, with the UVB lighting, ways to monitor the temperature and humidity, and then me just dialing it in with this little guy. Plus plenty of stuff that, like I said, is key to a little bit of them, being able to exercise. Oh, actually, you know what? Here, we'll do this. Can't talk about a ball python video without showing off a ball python, right? So this is Prince. This is a male mystic potion, and this is a good size, a little bit bigger than him, and then you want to think about moving it up to the next size. But you can get a ball python that, when you go to the reptile show, that you pick it up, it's still like a little guy. A little guy will do just fine in this nice, and I don't like to say crowded, but kind of cluttered enclosure, up to about this size. And then you want to think about getting up to a little bit bigger. I just haven't really shown him off very much, and I like mystic potions. So putting him in here like that, as you can see, there's still plenty of room for him to move around. Like they say the bare minimum size is the length, like the length of 2 is the length of the snake. Like this should be the bare minimum. I think we should go a little bit bigger and beyond that. And by purchasing a larger enclosure to begin with, that allows you to be able to customize it and only purchase the one for a longer period of time before you have to buy it. Otherwise, you're going to buy a 20-gallon tank, and then a 40-gallon tank, then a 75-gallon tank, and then one of these, or like 120 or something like that. If you get one of these to begin with, you get the really nice, good one for their husbandry to begin with. It's perfect for a long period of time, for the first 2, 3, sometimes 4 years of their life. And then once they get to adult size, you want to think about getting like a 4 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot enclosure. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. Oh, look at that. He's posing for the camera. Oh, gotta love Prince. He's such a showman. Or the ball python formerly known as Prince. I don't know, whatever. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Questions, comments, concerns, again, please let me know down in the comments below. Sorry for that kind of little false ending right there. But hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys are having a great day, and we'll check you next time.